You'll need a 5mm crochet hook, yarn, medium weight yarn of your choice, measuring tape, a pair of scissors, stitch markers, and a darning needle. Start with a slip knot and chain 60. 60 represents the length of the top. When you're chaining, don't be too tight with the stitches. Take the measurement and make sure that you've gotten the length that you want. When you're measuring the length, you don't stretch your work. I have a length of 17. We're going to work the back panel first, and for the back panel, we're going to divide your bust measurement by 2 and work half. Half of the bust measurement will be the back panel, the other half will be the front panel. So to begin row 1, we chain 1 while holding the last stitch. Then you're going to put your hook into that 60th stitch. Then you're going to yarn over, grab a loop. You'll have 2 loops on your hook. Then you're going to pull the second loop through the first loop that you had for our first slip stitch. So just like this. That's our first slip stitch. Then you're going to put your hook through the second stitch, the second chain, grab a loop and pull it through. That's the second slip stitch. Move into the third stitch, grab a loop and pull it through. Into the fourth, grab a loop, pull through. So we work a slip stitch into every chain till we get to the end of row 1. Ensure that you're not too tight with the slip stitches because you're going to work through them. I'm in the last stitch, so I'll just put my hook through, grab a loop and pull it through. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 2. We begin row 2 in the first stitch and we are going to be working the back loops. This right here, that's the first stitch. You're going to put your hook through, grab a loop and pull it through the loop that is on the hook. Go into the back loop of the second stitch, grab a loop, pull it through into the back loop of the next. Then we're going to work in the back loops in every stitch, working the slip stitches. Do this to the end of row 2. This is my last stitch, and into that stitch in the back loop, you're going to yarn over, put your hook, and then complete the slip stitch at that point. We are done with row 2, chain 1 and turn to begin row 3. We work row 3 the same way we've worked row 2. So we begin in the first stitch in the back loop, place a slip stitch in the back loop of the next stitch, do a slip stitch, and just continue working slip stitches into the back loops till you get to the end of row 3. So this pattern is quite simple. There isn't much that you're doing. You're just working a slip stitch into the back loop of every stitch. I'm in row 5 and I'll be working a total of 80 rows for the back panel, just repeating this one row. And once I have my 80 rows, I'll be back and show you how to measure, because I'll have hit half of my bust measurement. So just go on, work a number of rows that will give you your bust measurements. So I'll let you know the size that the 80 rows can fit once I have it ready. So this is what I have after 50 rows. Sorry, 80 rows, not 50. And my back panel is ready. So I'm just going to chain 1 at the end and cut off the yarn at that point, because we are done with that back part. Pull through and then fasten. Now I'll measure the width of the panel. So without stretching, this panel is at 12. 12 times 2 is 24. Now, if you give this a stretch, it's going to go up to around 18, 19 inches. It can even stretch up to 20. And that means a person with a bust of 24, although 24 will be too small, a person with a bust of between 30 and 40 inches will fit in this top, because it stretches very much. You can even go up to 44 inches. So I'm done with the back panel. I'll start working the front panel. Now, to work the front panel, we start the same way we did with the back panel, and then work 14 rows. 14 rows is standard for all the sizes. So regardless of the number of rows for the back panel that you have, you're going to start the front panel with 14 rows. I'll be back after the 14 rows, then I'll show you what to do next. So this is how we're going to work the front panel. We're going to have the first 14 rows right here. And then we're going to work a reduction for a number of rows depending on your size. Then at the center, we're going to have 14 rows. That is standard. The 14 at this point, and at this point is standard. Then we're going to increase up to a point right there, and then work the last 14 rows. So to know the number of rows we're going to work in these points of decrease and increase, we're going to take 14 plus 14 plus 14. That is 14 times 3, and this will be 42 rows. And my total number of rows is 80, so I'll take the 80 minus 42, and this gives me 38. Now the 38 that we get, we take it and divide it by 2, and this will be 19. So that means this point of decrease will be 19 rows. The next point, this point of increase will be 19. So my front panel will be 14 rows with no increase or decrease, 19 rows of decrease, 14 rows with no increase or decrease, 19 rows of increase, then 14 rows. So depending on your size, if you worked 100 rows, you're going to take 100 minus 42, and that will be 58. Then you're going to take 58 and divide it by 2, and this will be 29. So the points of decrease and increase will each be 29. So let's do the front panel. I have my 14 rows ready. So right there, we're going to have the 14, and then we're going to start working a decrease for 19 rows. So what I do is chain 1 and turn. Now you might need to mark the 14th row so that you know where you started the reduction. So I'll just get a stitch marker and mark that row. So this is my 14th. Just mark in that first stitch. The reason why I've marked in the first stitch is because we're not going to work into it, because we are skipping. To work a reduction, we begin in the second stitch. So we've been working in the first stitch for every row, at the beginning of every row, but now we are skipping. So we skip this and work into the next one. Work a slip stitch into that second stitch. Then you just work a slip stitch all the way down. This is row 15. So for row 15, we reduce at the beginning, but we don't reduce at the end. So this stitch marker will let you know that the reduction is on this side, but the other side remains the same. Now I'm going to work this row all the way down with one stitch into every stitch. Then I'll work my row 16, and I'll meet you when I'm coming to the end of row 16. I'm coming to the end of row 16 and I'll work till I have 2 stitches remaining. So at this point I have this stitch and this stitch, so I'm going to skip the second last and work in the last one for that second reduction. Chain 1 and turn to begin row 17. We're going to skip the first stitch, then work in the second because of that reduction. Then work a stitch into every previous stitch till you get to the end. At the end you're going to chain 1 and turn. Then remember, we are not reducing on this side, we are only reducing on this upper part of the top. So right now I'm in row, this is row 17. I have 2 stitches remaining at the end of row 18, so I'm going to skip this and work into the last one. Then chain 1 and turn to begin row 19. For row 19, we start by skipping the first stitch and then work into the second one for that reduction. So as you can see, we are slanting downwards. So I'll do my reduction, and once I get to row 23, I'll be back. It's actually row 33, sorry. Once I get to row 33, I'll be back and then we'll continue from there. Keep going. I've worked the 19 rows of reduction and right now I'm in row 34. So the row 33 ended at the bottom. So I'm coming up with row 34, and in row 34, we're not going to reduce, we'll work in every stitch. So I have this stitch remaining. We were skipping this one, but we're not skipping anymore. We work into it, then work into the last stitch, this one right here. This one looks like a stitch, but it's actually not a stitch, so don't work into that. You're going to chain 1 and turn to begin row 25. For row 25, we're going to row 35, that is, we're going to work in the first stitch. We begin in the first stitch because we're not reducing at this point. Work into that stitch, then work into all the other stitches, and we are working the part that is straight, that where we are not increasing or decreasing, for a total of 14 rows. So we have the 14, the 19. Now I'm going to work the 14 with no decrease at all. So just 1 stitch into every other stitch. I'm in row 36 and I'm just going to work a stitch, 1 slip stitch into every previous slip stitch that we had till I get to the top part of the top. So just work 1 stitch to this end. At the end you're going to chain 1 and turn and continue working, maintaining the same number of stitches for a total of 14 rows. Because we reduced up to row 33, we are going to work from row 33 plus 14, which will get us to row 47. 33 plus 14, that's row 47. So I'll be back once I get to row 47. So I've done this part with the 14 rows, and right now I'm in row 47. I've actually worked row 40. Row 47 ends at the bottom for me, and so I've worked row 48 up. I'm coming up, and at the end of row 48 we're going to start the increase. So let me just finish row 48, working a slip stitch into every stitch. So I'm in the last stitch, and right there I'll do my last slip stitch. Now we need to increase, and to increase, because it's a slip stitch, we can actually not go into the same stitch because it's like we'll be unraveling the work. So what I do is I go to this, into this connection right here, the gap between the previous row, like it's a stitch in the previous row. So I'll just put my hook there, grab a loop and do a slip stitch right there, then chain 1 and turn. So we've just increased, and we're going to increase for the next 19 rows. So that's the first row of increase. Now in the second row, after turning, we begin in the first stitch that we've just worked, and instead of working a slip stitch, I'll start with a single crochet into that stitch. Then next I'll do a slip stitch into the same stitch, and there we have 2 stitches into that first stitch. Then I'll continue all the way down with 1 slip stitch. Then when I get to the bottom, I'll chain 1 and turn. Then the increase is happening on this side, so when I'm coming back with the next row, I'll increase on this side. So let me do this row and the next one, and I'll meet you when I'm increasing again. So I've worked a stitch into every stitch till I got into the end, and because I need to increase, I'll go in. So these are my last stitch, so I'll just go into this other loop right here and slip stitch, and that will be my increase at the end of that row. Then chain 1 and turn to begin the next row. As we are going to increase the same way we increased in the previous row. We started with a single crochet and then a slip stitch into the same stitch. Then all the other stitches get a slip stitch. So alternate the increases. So when you're beginning from this side, you increase by starting with a single crochet. When you're increasing from the other side, you work into all the stitches. Then into the last stitch, you're going to go. After working in this loop, you'll go into this loop and work the last stitch, that is an increase stitch. And that's what we're going to do till we have 19 rows of increase. So I'll keep going and I'll meet you once I've increased for a total of 19 rows. At this point, I'm done with the increase part, and I'm just going to do the last 14 rows with no increase or decrease at all. So what we do is just chain 1 and turn, and we're going to place a slip stitch into every stitch, beginning with the first one. So do a slip stitch all the way down. At the end, chain 1 and work a slip stitch all the way up. At the end, chain 1 and continue working the slip stitch with rows of no increase and decrease, and I'll do this for a total of 14 rows. Right now I'm in row 67, so once I do the 14, I'll get to 80, and once I get to 80 rows, I'll be done with the front part of the top, and we can connect the front and the back to complete the top. So I'll meet you once I'm done with the 14 rows, and then we'll do the connection of the front and the back panel. I'm done with the 8 rows of the front panel, and now I'm ready to connect the front and the back panel to complete the top. So I'll just get the back panel. You can choose whatever side to be your wrong side. So this is the part of connection at the top. I'll just chain 1, go into this first row, and then I'll get the first row on the back panel. Then I'll join them with a single crochet, and as I do that, I'll work over this end. So just do a single crochet, then go into the next row and onto the second row on the other side, and join with a single crochet, then join the next. We are joining till we get to this part. Once you get there, chain 1 and cut off the yarn, pull through, fasten, and that top part of the top is joined. We're going to move on to the other side and do the same thing from this first row and the first row on the other side. Get the yarn and reattach. Reattach, then chain 1. Then go back into that stitch and do a single crochet. Then do a single crochet into the next stitch. Make sure that you're attaching the stitch on one end and the stitch on the other end. So we are attaching till we get where this stitch marker is. I'll just pull it out and place my last stitch at this point and on the stitch on the other side. Then chain 1 and cut off the yarn. Pull through, fasten. We're going to weave in those ends at that point. Now it's time to attach the sides, and as we do that, we're going to leave out 25 stitches from the top part. So I'm going to count 25 stitches on this side and on this side, then I'll mark, and then I'll move on to the other side, count 25, then mark, then I'll attach all the way down. So let me do the marking, then come back. So count 25 stitches on this end, 25 on this end, then join with a stitch marker. I've marked out the 25th stitch on the top part on both ends, and so we're going to join from the bottom all the way to where we have the stitch marker, and we'll do that on the other side. We reconnect the yarn at this point in the first stitch. Then chain 1 and go back into that first stitch and do a single crochet. The reason why I'm connecting with the single crochets is because it's not easy to weave in the ends on slip stitches, so we need the single crochets for weaving in the ends. So on to the second stitch and the second stitch on the other side, do a single crochet. As I connect the two ends, I'm working over the ends. Once you get to one stitch before the stitch marker, you're just going to chain one and cut off the yarn at that point. Then you're going to reconnect the yarn on the other side and join the same way we've joined on that other side. So I'll be back once I've joined this part right here. Same way we've done with this side. Both sides of the top are joined, and we're going to turn this to the right side. Next, we're going to work the hoodie part and attach it on top. I've already worked the hoodie part, and for this one, we work it the same way we did with the back panel. The only difference is that for the back panel, we did a total of 60 chains. For the hoodie part, you'll do a total of 80 chains. So you want it longer than the top, and then we'll do a total of 80 plus 80, which is 160 rows. After you're done with the 160 rows, we're going to connect these two ends of the hoodie part together like this. So at the end, I've already chained one, and now I'll just go on join the 2 points, the 2 ends of the hoodie with single crochets. So into the first stitch and the first stitch on the other side, do a single crochet to connect them and connect the corresponding stitches all the way to the end. I'm in the last stitch, so I'll just join right there and chain one, but I'll not cut off the yarn because I'm going to use this yarn to attach the hoodie to the top. Now turn this to the right side. And then get the top. We're going to align the stitches such that we'll connect from this top part right here, then this part will come to the front part. So what I'll do is I'll get my stitch markers and mark points of connection, beginning with this first part. So then after marking, we are joining from the right side of the top. We are not turning it to the wrong side. So I'll just get this last stitch right here and put my hook through, and I'll start with the front part. So into this row next to the stitch and a row on the other side, you just want to align your work well. Make sure that the rows are well aligned and just attach with a single crochet. Remember, we are attaching from the right side of the top, so this hem will be visible from the right side. Just connect corresponding rows with single crochets. Once you get to a stitch marker, just pull it out and continue working. This is what I have at this point, and I'll just continue joining all the way around, and I'll be back once I'm done. Once you get to the end, you're going to close up that row with a slip stitch and then chain one and turn your work. We are going to work under that row that we've just done, and we're going to work with slip stitches. So we go into this stitch, do a slip stitch, the next one, slip stitch into all the stitches all the way around that row that we've used to join the hoodie and the top. And this is what you should get. I'm in the last stitch, and so we'll do a slip stitch on top of the first slip stitch, then chain 1 and cut off the yarn. At that point we are done attaching the top with the hoodie, and at this point we are done with the project. Whatever is remaining is to weave in the ends, so go on weaving your ends and you'll be done. So this is how the front part of the top will look like. This is the hoodie, and this is the back part. So if you've enjoyed this, kindly leave a like, comment on this video, share it, and if you're not subscribed, kindly subscribe and hit that notification bell so that you'll get notified every time I upload a tutorial. Thank you so much, and see you in the next tutorial.